Hey guys, it's me, Ren Ben Kanan, coming through with another edition of On the Road, Jack Kerouac's famous novel. Of course, this is the original scroll edition. So as you can see, there's absolutely no paragraphs going on here at all. We just have verses and verses of incredible prose. We're about to start book 2 here, but I want to thank everyone that's been checking out the videos. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You don't realize how much it means to me, even just to get a view or a like or a comment. This is a real labor of love, and I'm happy to do it for you. So without further ado, this is book 2 of Jack Kerouac's On the Road, the original scroll edition. It was a year and a half before I saw Neal again. I stayed home all that time. I finished my book and began going to school on the GI Bill of Rights. At Christmas 1948, my mother and I went down to visit my sister in the South, laden with presents. I had been writing to Neal, and he said he was coming out east again. I told him, if so, he would find me in Rocky Mount, North Carolina between Christmas and New Year. And one day when all our southern relatives were sitting around in the parlor in Rocky Mount, gaunt men and women with old southern soil in their eyes, talking in low, whining voices about the weather and the crops and the general weary recapitulation of who had a baby and who got a new house and so on, a mud-spattered 49 Hudson drew up in front of the house on the dirt road. I had no idea who it was. A weary young fellow, muscular and ragged in a t-shirt, unshaven, red-eyed, came to the porch and rang the bell. I opened the door and suddenly realized it was Neal. He'd come all the way from San Francisco to my sister's door in North Carolina. And in an amazingly short time too, because I had just written my last letter telling where I was. In the car, I could see 2 figures sleeping. I'll be goddamn, Neal. Who's in the car? Hello, man. It's Luann and Al Hinkle. We gotta have a place to wash up immediately. We're dog tired. But how'd you get here so fast? Oh man, that Hudson goes. Where'd you get it? I bought it with my savings. I've been working as a brakeman on the Southern Pacific Railroad, making $400 a month. There was utter confusion in the following hour. In the first place, my southern relatives had no idea what was going on or who or what Neal, Luann, and Al Hinkle were. They dumbly stared. My mother and my sister were in the kitchen to consult. There were in all 11 people in that little southern house. Not only that, but my sister had just decided to move from that house, and half her furniture was gone. She and her husband and baby were coming to Ozone Park to live with us in the little apartment. When Neal heard this, he at once offered his services with the Hudson. He and I would carry furniture to New York in 2 fast trips and bring my mother back in the tail end of the second trip. This was going to save us a lot of money. It was agreed upon. My sister made a spread and the 3 battered travelers sat down to eat. Luann had not slept since Denver. I thought she looked older and more beautiful now. Let me describe everything that happened and why Luann was with Neal. He'd lived happily with Carolyn in San Francisco ever since that fall of 1947. He got a job on the railroad, he made a lot of money. He suddenly became the father of a cute little girl, Kathy Joanne Cassidy, and then he blew his top. And while walking down the street one day, he saw 49 Hudson for sale and rushed to the bank for his entire roll. He bought the car on the spot. Al Hinkle was with him. Now they were broke. Neal calmed Carolyn's fears, and he told her he'd be back in a month. Hey, I'm going to New York to bring Jack back. She was not too pleased at this prospect. But what's the purpose of all this? Why are you doing this to me? It's nothing, darling. Jack has pleaded and begged with me to come and get him. It's absolutely necessary for me to, but we won't go into all these explanations. I'll tell you why. Listen, I'll tell you why. And he told her why. And of course, it made no sense. Big tall Al Hinkle also worked on the railroad with Neal. They had just been laid off during a strike. Al had just met a girl called Helen who was living in San Francisco with her savings. These 2 mindless cads decided to bring the girl along to the east and have her foot the bill. Al cajoled and pleaded she wouldn't go unless he married her. In a whirlwind few days, Al Hinkle married Helen, and Neal, rushing around to get the necessary papers, and a few days before Christmas, they rolled out to San Francisco at 70 miles per, headed for LA and the snowless southern road. In LA, they picked up a sailor in a travel bureau and took him along for $15 worth of gas. He was bound for Indiana. They also picked up a woman with her idiot daughter for $4 gas fare to Arizona and zoomed off. Neal sat the idiot girl with him up front and dug her. As he said, "All the way, man. Such a gone, sweet little soul. Oh, we talked of fires and the desert turning to paradise and her parrot that swore in Spanish." Dropping off these passengers, they proceeded to Tucson. And all along the way, Helen Hinkle, Al's new wife, kept complaining that she was tired and wanted to sleep in a motel. If this kept up, they'd spend all their money long before North Carolina. 2 nights she forced to a stop and blew tens on motels. By the time they got to Tucson, she was broke. Neal and Al gave her the slip in a hotel lobby and resumed the voyage alone with the sailor and without qualm. Al Hinkle was a tall, calm, unthinking fellow who was completely ready to do anything Neal asked him. And at this time, Neal was too busy for scruples. He was roaring through Las Cruces, New Mexico, when he suddenly had an explosive yen to see his first sweet wife, Luann, again. She was up in Denver. He swung the car north against the feeble protests of the sailor and zoomed into Denver in the evening. He ran and found Luann in a hotel. They had 10 hours of wild lovemaking. Everything was decided again. They were going to stick. Luann was the only girl Neal ever really loved. He was nauseous with regret when he saw her face again, and when, as of yore, he pleaded and begged at her knees for the joy of her being, she understood Neal. She stroked his hair. She knew he was mad. To soothe the sailor, Neal fixed him up with a girl in a hotel room over the bar where the old pool hall gang always drank at Glenarm and 14th. But the sailor refused the girl and in fact walked off in the night, and they never saw him again. He evidently took a bus to Indiana. Luann and Al Hinkle roared east to Colfax and out to the Kansas plains. Great snowstorms overtook them. In Missouri at night, Neal had to drive with his scarf-wrapped head stuck out the window with snow glasses. And that made him look like a monk peering into the manuscripts of the snow because the windshield was covered with an inch of ice. He drove by the birth county of his forebears without a thought. In the morning, the car skidded to an icy hill and flapped into a ditch. A farmer offered to help them out. They all got hung up when they picked up the hitchhiker who promised them $1 if they let him ride to Memphis. And in Memphis, they went into his house and he puttered around looking for the $1. He got drunk and said he couldn't find it. They resumed across Tennessee. The rods were busted from the accident. Neal had been driving 90 and now he had to stick to a steady 70 or the whole motor would go whirring down the mountainside. They crossed the Smoky Mountains in midwinter, and when they arrived at my sister's door, they had not eaten for 30 hours, just candy and cheese crackers.